Hi everyone, I'm Dina with Mills Family Gardening. Today is February 1st. We live in North Texas, Zone 8A. And in this video, we'll be planting onions with onion plants. We ordered our onion plants on Dixon Dale Farms website. They have a very good delivery time. They got delivered in about 2 or 3 days. And we've been ordering from that company for a few years. They always do a good job delivering really good quality onion plants to us. These onion plants were delivered on January 4th. And back then, our weather was too cold. It was still about 19 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a very cold week, and I thought I would keep the plants in the house somewhere in a cool place. Well, I kept them too long. It's been almost a month, but it's okay. We're going to take our onion plants from the box, and you will see that they still look really good. When you order onion plants, you're supposed to take them out of the box right away. I did not. I kept the onions in the box in the coldest room in our house. I did keep the box open, and I simply kept it above our grow lights, and they did just fine there. You can see that the onions, the tops of the onions are still green. That means the onions are alive, and the onion tops will feed off the onion bulb for about a month, and after that they will start drying up. So make sure not to keep them like this without planting for too long. When you receive your onion plants, make sure not to put them in any water or soil. Just take them out of the box if you'd like to, and keep them in a cool and dry place. You can see that the roots of onion plants look dry. They even crumble a little bit, but it's okay. Right now, onions are in their dormant state, and once we plant them in the ground and start watering them, they will get rehydrated and they'll start growing. You can see that some of the onions actually have their roots still pretty moist, so that means they're alive. Probably the most important rule about onions is choosing the right variety. Here in the South, we grow short day and intermediate varieties. If you live in a colder climate up north, then you need to grow long day variety onions. For the onions to grow to a big size, they need to be planted in full sun, especially when they're planted in late spring, or here, this is midwinter right now. The sun is not very high, so they need to get as much sun as possible. So plant them in full sun. They also require well-drained soil. Here in our backyard, we have heavy red clay soil, and I mixed in a lot of composted cow manure this year, and also last year I did the same thing, and I mixed it with the soil. So our soil is much better here. After I mixed composted cow manure with the soil, I also spread all-purpose fertilizer right on top of the soil. I also added some rock dust and oyster shells and mixed it just lightly with the top layer of the soil with a rake. Onions prefer slightly acidic soil with a pH between 6.2 and 6.8. Here in our backyard, we have more alkaline soil, and I know that because every time I plant blueberries or raspberries in our soil in the ground, they always die. That means that our soil is alkaline. I did not do any tests. You can test your soil and see what it's like. If your soil is more alkaline or neutral, you can apply some of the acidifying fertilizer like you would use for hydrangeas or blueberries or raspberries. Onions need to be planted between 4 and 6 weeks before the last freeze. Today is February 1st, and our last freeze is about mid-March, so we're planting them a little bit early. But if it gets too cold, I'll simply cover them with a frost cover, and they should be fine. Onions can tolerate pretty cold temperatures. Onions are heavy feeders, and they need to be fertilized right from the start. For that reason, I spray the fertilizer before I'm planting onions. Preferably, the middle number in that NPK, which is phosphorus, should be higher than nitrogen and potassium. If your all-purpose fertilizer has equal numbers of NPK, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, you can simply add bone meal to increase phosphorus in your soil. I set up drip lines as my markers. Onions need to be planted in rows that are at least 1 foot apart, and you can see that our rows are about 1 foot apart. 2 feet is even better, or 1.5 feet is great. Onions need to be planted about 4 inches apart in a row, and I'm going to use my drip emitters to mark the distance. They're about 6 inches apart. So I'm going to plant onions at this spot, right by the drip emitter, and then right about here. That should be about 4 inches. And onion plants need to be planted about 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. If they're planted too deep, then they'll have a hard time to grow large size bulbs. And also, if they start falling out, just put them a little deeper. If you planted them too deep, simply pull them up a little bit and make sure to bring the soil around the bulb to support them so they would not be falling down. And I'm going to plant this bulb just the same way. Onions need to be planted 4 inches apart if they're grown for storage. If you would like to grow spring onions or scallions, you can plant them about 2 inches apart because they don't need to get large. As soon as the tops grow taller and you think they're good enough to eat, you can simply harvest them by pulling them up and then leave all the other onions that are about 4 inches apart in the ground for storage. Onions are not only heavy feeders, they're also very thirsty pretty much their whole life. So make sure not to let them sit in dry soil. Make sure to water them regularly and don't let them dry out. Now, if the green leaves of the onion start turning yellow, that's a very good sign that they might be overwatered. That's not good for onions either. Make sure to keep the moisture level of the soil pretty even, and the onions should be doing well. The bigger onions get, the more water they will require, so make sure to water them well, especially further in their growing season. But when it comes closer to harvesting and once the tops start falling over, make sure to stop any watering and let them stay in dry ground for a few days before harvesting. Since onions are heavy feeders, make sure to fertilize them every 2 weeks with granular fertilizer. We use liquid fertilizer, we use fish fertilizer plus more bloom, because fish fertilizer on its own has a very high level of nitrogen. So we need to add more phosphorus and potassium, and more bloom adds more phosphorus and potassium, and that makes it more like an all-purpose liquid fertilizer. We fertilize our garden through the drip irrigation, but you can simply use a watering can for liquid fertilizer. Onions do not compete well with weeds. For that reason, make sure to remove all weeds, and also to prevent weeds from growing, you can spread any kind of mulch as long as it's natural mulch and it doesn't have any artificial dyes or perfumes. We have a lot of used bedding from our guinea pigs, so I use that a lot in our garden, but last year I also used some pine mulch, which worked really well for our onions. And if you need to know how to harvest onions and store them correctly, we made a video about that you can watch. We'll put it in the description. And also we made a full-length video on how to grow onions from seed to harvest, if you would like to watch that video also. Sometimes onions can be prone to fungal diseases and also some insects that start chewing on their leaves. For that purpose, you can use a fungicide or an insecticide, preferably organic, and that should take care of those problems. And that's how we plant onions. I hope you all have a great onion harvest this year. Thank you so much for watching this video and have a great day.